Everybody, welcome to Forge20. We're going to try and do something a little bit different today.
Three, four.
So I've been watching some videos, as you do, about medieval weapons, and these things are called Plumbata. They're a Roman throwing dart. So, supposedly, you take this thing and you flick it underhand, you throw it into the crowd of guys over there, and it harasses them and pisses them off. It's not supposedly actually intended to kill anyone. According to the videos that I've seen, it's more intended to harass and annoy. Started having to think about this after watching. So the first videos are by Todd of Todd's Workshop, and they're good. He does a very nice job of presenting all the archaeological options, I guess you'd say. And then he proceeds to make something that looks sort of like this, but with the weight closer to the tip, and he's trying to throw them for distance. And then along comes George Sprave, of course, the slingshot guy, and he makes some. They also have the weight very close to the tip, and he puts a string on them, and he wants to throw them underhand for distance. I'm not really buying it. I throw knives, I throw axes, I shoot bows, shoot guns, I think about weaponry type stuff all the time. I'm not buying that you would carry 3 of these onto the field to throw them underhanded 40 or 50 meters to just kind of annoy the enemy. I'm not buying it. That's what slings are for, and rocks, right? Someone made this, and it took a lot of work. It wasn't easy to make this thing. They did say in the literature that they made them by the thousands, but they had tens of thousands of guys in their army. Of course they made them by the thousands. But did they look like this? No one really knows. That's the thing, is that no one knows how long this wooden piece was, and whether they were actually fletched, and how they actually threw them. So I started digging, and I looked online, as you do, the only resource we have these days. But I found some articles, Hungarian Archaeology. I'll throw some links down in the description. Plumbata do look like this. They don't look, the weight's not up here, the weight's back here. There's a hammered steel point. Usually it's flattened out down here to make a cup where it fits around the shaft, and then there's lead ball poured around that socket. It's not poured up here near the point, it's poured down here to help hold the socket closed around the shaft and to give it a little extra weight. So much for that motor. This doesn't throw shorthand and short distance for anything in the world. Every time you try and throw it like that, it ends up flying basically flat and hitting on at the CG right on the side. I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. It doesn't make any sense. So you look further into it, and they're talking about confusion with the naming. They're going all the way back to Livy, and it really, what it demonstrates to me is that these are poorly described in the literature. It does say if they're fletched that there has to be a portion sticking out behind the fletching so that they're able to be thrown one way or another. But the interesting thing is that this is on the small side. Like, this is about 8 inches, 13 or 14 centimeters. And the long ones were only 20-25 centimeters, about a foot long. And that's just the point, right? The iron piece that remains. The other interesting thing is that in Livy, these are called javelina, these kind of points, and they're meant to go on a much longer shaft, which makes way more sense if it was on a much longer shaft, because then you could actually stick with it and you have a better chance of throwing it. I think I'm gonna heat them up one more time and try and get them straighter. That one's not too bad, but sometimes they're off a little bit. One way or the other that way. This one's a little bent too. So what we're going to do today is we're going to throw all of these things. This one that I made, that's sort of, you know, looks like what's in the literature, like what examples, archaeological examples that we have. I'm going to try this head with the longer shaft to see if that tells us anything. But at the same time, I made these two, which they're literally from the same pieces of stock. And I mounted them in a way that I thought they would throw better and more effectively. And I've thrown them, and they do throw better and more effectively. And I'll show you that. But they don't look quite like what is in the literature, so you have to question if that's the right answer or not. Okay? So let's just throw these things, and you'll start to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, a couple other points I think are important to make. In the literature, Plumbata were widely used and widely adopted over the course of 1,000 years, maybe, basically. There was one group that used them for about 200 years, and they're well known for it. And the guys that used them originally, and they were effective killers with this weapon, which is why they carried it. They carried up to 3 of them, supposedly inside their shield. I don't know, maybe like that, point up. Nobody knows. But they were known for killing people with this weapon. They didn't carry them to harass and annoy the enemy. And that's why they were widely adopted. And that makes sense to me. You use something on the battlefield because it's effective, right? You don't carry something that's sort of like, it's heavy, it's annoying to carry around, and it doesn't really work. You carry something because it's annoying, but it stabs the crap out of the guy, and it doesn't come out, you know? And you can put it where you want to because you're good with it. Like, how is that possible from a weapon that doesn't throw well at short range and only throws well underhand at long distance? I'm not, again, not trying to disagree with Todd and George. You know, they're doing their thing, and they all have good points, you know, about this thing. It just seems to me that we're missing something essential about this weapon. All right, so here, close range, I'm just going to try and sort of sling this into the tree, and you can see it doesn't really want to hit. Now these ones, on the other hand, I can stick them really hard. You know, with practice. Let's try that again. So all I'm doing is holding it, you know, loosely in my hand, throwing it like a knife, and I could usually get it to stick. That example notwithstanding. These things, on the other hand, no matter how you throw them overhand at short range, they always over-rotate. Danger, Will Robinson. I was doing it good yesterday. Of course, I can't do it on film. So at short range, they can be very effective. But here, as with the ones that Todd and George made, the weight is much more like right at the very end of the thing, so they don't over-rotate so much. Just barely, and it's because I'm like 6 feet away. But you can see the one that looks archaeologically correct really wants to over-rotate. Okay, now that actually looks much more like what you'd think of as a Roman javelina. That longer point with the weight there. And why? Because it's easy to move. I can stick with it, right? It's, you know, the point stays out in front of you with all that weight, and it gives it another oomph, even though the shaft is light, right? It gives me a weapon that I can really stick into somebody, and it does a lot of damage. I can also throw it like a spear. Let's see if you can see that. Even without fletching, it throws way better. Here we are. I dismounted them from those short shafts and I made myself two new archaeologically accurate examples. I got this one short. There are some in the record that don't have barbs, but all of them have the weight farther back. On this one I put the weight farther forward so that it's like the other ones that are being tested on YouTube these days, and because it will fly better with the weight far forward. Now this one is historically accurate with the weight back. And I think, honestly, I think the longer shaft is much more the thing. They do say, oh, they're fletched, but they don't say how. And part of the name means little beard, one of the things in Latin. And I think it was probably something like that. It's just a leather tassel with 3 whippings. There's one down inside there. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. Yeah, there it is. To sleep it, keep them from slipping on the shaft. One holds it tight, and then there's 2 that keep it from moving. Right? That's entirely achievable and large scale in short order, much faster than trying to do feather fletching. What accomplishes exactly the same thing, and more importantly, doesn't get hung up on anything on the inside of your shield or on your side. When you're trying to carry these fold right down. They don't hurt your hands the way letting a feather slip through your hand would do. So I think there's an argument to be made that the little bearded part of this thing was not somebody's name or just some fanciful application of the visual effect of the arrows in flight, but instead was a description of how they were fletched. So that's why I built this one, which is quite long. And why, you may ask, did I have to build 2 completely new examples when I had one that was already long? Well, I'll tell you. See it there? Yeah, about 30 feet up in a tree. Stuck in the tree. Exactly the same problem that George Sprave had. And here's the thing. They say they're supposed to be used in forested areas against woodland peoples. I don't buy it. Not buying that you throw a high arcing, lobbing thing into the trees. What's the point of that? I can't even... How am I supposed to get that down? The little one, I don't know if you can see that. And the big one, see, trees. Trees are the bane of these things. You don't want to be anywhere near a tree when you throw this stuff. With no effort at all, you can throw the much longer one a much longer distance. And here's the problem. They go sideways at short distances. I don't think they were meant to be used the way people thought they were meant to be used. And I don't think they were as short as people thought they are. I think that is a much better example. I don't know. Tell me what you think. All right. I hope you can see that. I went and put a longer shaft on that one and some actual fletching. Perhaps that's more like what you see in Re-Creations. So let's see if we can throw both of these things. These barbs are wicked. They stick in everything. And I think that's an important point too. It's a little long for the underhand throw. To choke up on a little bit. Maybe hold it right there on the leather fletching. And then off it goes. And doesn't land flat. That one, much more lawn darty. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I shortened the shaft on this one. Pushed the leather fletching up. With the weight here, these just don't fly well. Okay? If you put the weight where the archaeological record shows the weight goes, they don't fly straight for nothing. No matter how you throw them, no matter how you fletch them, no matter how strong or good a shot you are, it's crappy to have the weight way back here. So there's something else going on with these things. There's something that we don't understand still. All right? And I really think it's because these were never really thrown at all. They were put on long lances, 5 to 6 feet long. The weight is simply meant to help carry them into the target from a push. Rarely thrown. That's my opinion. The best long distance performance is from that one, which is the medium long length shaft with the weight all the way forward. But again, that's not what it shows in the archaeological record. It shows that. I also think it's important to note that later armies, notably Celtic armies, referred to this design as a club, not even as an arrow or a dart or a spear. The word dart is a modern application. It's the correct term for this is a javelin. And that's consistent with what the archaeologists say. It's called the Javelina. So they had to practice with the big spear and the small spear is basically what it is. It was not a dart. Because if it was a dart, it would be much shorter. The weight would all be in the head. The handle would be 12 inches long because that's what's effective for throwing and carrying. It would look much more like a knife with just a point, a throwing knife. Honestly, the more I look at these things, the more confused I get. Can you see the smoke? Ridiculous. There's 2 things we burned up this week. And this one's expensive. Okay, so here I have 2 what you call extreme versions of the Plumbata. I spent a lot of time thinking about this last night. I watched a couple more videos, and tellingly, there's one where LindyBeige is interviewing a reenactor who has a dart that looks almost exactly like this, leather flights and everything. And the guy goes through all the classic arguments, you know, underhand throw, harass the enemy, not meant to kill. And you can see that LindyBeige is skeptical and about the wild throw and hitting your own guys. And so I came out here and I thought, okay, let me take the one that has the weight all the way forward and is the most likely to perform well with a short body. Let me put the biggest flights I can get on it, okay, and see how it performs. Then I went and said, let me take the archaeological correct head and put it on a much longer shaft. This is a piece of poplar that I tapered down at the end to fit into the socket. I also tapered this end a little bit. That's what blew up my sander, I guess. Let me tell you, this thing throws. This is a weapon to be afraid of. This still flies sideways half the time, even when you lob it. It is not a weapon that anybody is going to be afraid of. And I'm right in the right weight. This is 210, a little bit over grams. I'm right in the right length, what everyone's talking about. This thing, if you threw this at me, I probably wouldn't even blink, especially if I had a shield and armor on. I would just keep right on going. This thing, on the other hand, with the same point, the same length of point, and a little bit more shaft, is so much more dangerous. At 10 to 15 yards, I can throw this and put this through a lot of stuff. It hits really hard because I can throw it really straight. Now, I put flights on it kind of in line with my idea, that I was talking about, the beards of Mars, the little tassels of leather, but I could put these same leather flights on here. It would fly even better. This thing hits like a truck, and it sticks deep into the tree. And I'm going to show you that here in a second. This thing, still, I can't get it to stick for nothing. Even in a high lob, sometimes it doesn't even stick into the ground. So here's the short dart. I'm going to throw it just like a dart. And you see it still wants to over-rotate. Here's the Javelina, thrown like a javelin. And you can see that that is a weapon. Let me just show you this. The head is completely buried in the tree. And the barbs make it very difficult to get out. But see this? This is a javelin throw, and it's accurate and easy. And if I'm a strong-armed Roman soldier, I can throw this quite a distance. Now watch this. See the wobble? That's terrible. The other important thing to remember about flighted weapons is that the flights don't take effect until it's already moving. If this thing's not stable when it comes off your hand, it's never going to get stable just because of the fletching. Even when I throw it really high in the air, if it's not stable when it comes off my finger, it won't arc. It'll just wobble around the entire time. Here is my assertion and my challenge, YouTube. I don't think a Plumbata looks like this. I think a Plumbata looks like this. I think this is a lawn dart that doesn't work half the time and is a toy, but it looks compelling. You know, it's got leather, it's the nice fat head. You can play with this toy and kid yourself and think that you're a Roman soldier. Whereas this is the kind of weapon that you go out and get famous for killing people with en masse, all right? This is a Legionnaire's weapon. A short javelin, we can argue about the fletching, you tell me what you think, but I think a Plumbata looks like this and not like this. Every time. Every time. And let's not forget that with this weapon, I can hold it in my hand, I can have a shield, I can stick with it, right? I can fight, I can move it quickly, I can thrust low, I can do all the things that you can do with a spear, right? And I can throw it, short and long distance. With this, I can't do any of those things. So tell me why this is what they're famous for carrying into war for 1,000 years. And not this. Forge 20. Da-na-na!